this March 5th Planning and Zoning meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda today is approval of the meeting minutes from January the 8th, 2020. I've reviewed the minutes. They look good to me. Anybody have any comments or corrections? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion to approve. Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Raise your hand. All right, we're going to move on to 2, consideration and final action on a preliminary plat for Whiskey Springs. Drew?
Good afternoon, Commission. This is a preliminary plat for Whiskey Springs subdivision, mixed-use subdivision being 787.63 acres within the BS&F survey, number 1, abstract 77, the GC and SF Railroad Company survey, number 1672, abstract 1591, GC and SF Railroad survey number 1671, abstract 1006, the SFIW Company survey number 2, abstract 1093, and the Henry Kukuk survey number 686, abstract number 223, all part of a 798.67 acre tract recorded in volume 1474, page 683, the official public records, Kerr County, Texas. So here is the preliminary plat. This does include multiple phases. Again, it's mixed use, so we do have some commercial, multifamily, and residential, along with the golf course. Here's a quick breakdown of some of the uses and the lots. You'll see the different commercial phases, the residential phases, stage 2 and 3, 18-hole golf course, golf resort, hotel, the clubhouse, 7 commercial lots, 357 single-family lots, 70 multifamily units across 10 buildings, and this is zoned a planned development district. The conditions we have for you, these are revised from your original packet that was emailed to you. Working with Whiskey Springs team, they addressed most of those comments. The only real comment, the rest of these are just kind of notes. The first comment that the proposed street names will be submitted to City and Kerr 911. We're going to keep working with Kerr 911 to make sure there's not conflicts across the county. So the street names are not approved with the preliminary plat. We'll work through those on the civil plans and final plats as we move forward. Civil construction drawings need to include any TxDOT required improvements from their TIA. The final plat, basically the stage 3 residential final plat will need to include a reference to the road easement on the adjacent property. The final plat, with any utilities, will be signatory on the plat for each of those different phases. The final plats will also need to include the TxDOT requirements and signed by TxDOT. The final plat will need to include the public right-of-way as dedicated to the city of Kerrville for the purposes of right-of-way, maintain utilities, improvements within the right-of-way. And then the final plat, all green spaces and parcels, ownership information, and who maintains those. Some of that will be a mix between the HOA and golf club and different uses, so I want to make sure those are clear on the final plats. With that, staff recommends approval with those conditions. Be pleased to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Time frame wise, from preliminary plat to get to this stage here where we start approving the final plats, do you guys have, I know when we talked last year, you was thinking about it was, I don't know, Labor Day. Are we still on that line, or?
Actually, condition on how quickly the city can push our construction drawings through.
Okay.
We're prepared to move forward.
Okay, great. I have no questions. If there are no further questions, I would entertain a motion for approval of the preliminary plat.
I'll move to approve with the conditions listed.
Yes?
Let's have a clarification real quick.
Sure, step up,
You want to step the
Please.
microphone or?
please.
So I'm going to state my name and.
Understand, you're not tied, that was just a question, you're not tied, this preliminary plat doesn't tie you to any time frame.
Okay.
That was just a question I had.
Okay.
So my name is Jim Boyd, and I'm one of the principal partners of the project. When Drew was summarizing the plat layout, originally the AFP called out 357 traditional single-family lots. The entitlement for the project calls for 368. We have since updated the preliminary plat from the AFP to reflect 368, not 357. There was an 11-lot discrepancy when we were working out some problems with our adjacent neighbors. And in that interim, the AFP was designed with 357. Those 11 lots reduced from the overall entitlement, but we have it now back up to 368.
So that will be fixed, Drew?
Yeah, sorry, this summary is from the adequate facilities plan that he's referencing. The preliminary plat does have the total lot count.
Okay.
That's correct.
368.
Thank you, Jim, I appreciate
The total
that.
lot density will reflect the total 368.
Appreciate it. Perfect. You guys need anything else before we vote? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the preliminary plat.
I'll move with the conditions listed.
We have a motion to approve. We have a
I'll second.
second with the conditions listed. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, preliminary plat is so approved. Wish you guys great success. Appreciate you being here. Move on to number 3, which is public hearing, consideration, and action on some code ordinance changes. And before I do this, what's the reason for all this?
So over the last several years, I say several, last probably 3 years since we've done a minor update, staff has just kind of taken note of issues we've come across with development in the code, things that we've seen that make development more or less easier, more development friendly. So we've identified a handful of those things. We did this kind of a brief rundown in our workshop in December. Did a workshop with City Council in January, so now we're back to you guys for formal approval.
Okay.
So this is Chapter 60, Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, is more commonly known as the zoning code. Amending said code to add new definitions, amendments to development regulations for certain districts, administrative processes, and the land use table. Martin, can you change PowerPoints? Perfect, thank you. And feel free to stop me as I go through this. The slides are more or less in order to the sections of the ordinance, but there are some that overlap. So I'll go through the slides. If you have any questions, stop me and we can dig into the actual ordinance and explain from there. This is part of the Kerrville 2050 plan to ensure that development services, processes, and codes are not impediments to development or redevelopment, and also to ensure that our codes are just kept up to date with modern trends and development patterns. Again, we're looking at definitions and land uses, some updates to the residential development regulations, mixed-use zoning, and some parking ratios, and of course the land use table related to some of those. So we amended the definition of artisan craftsman workshop just by removing the repair by hand of custom products. Again, we talked about really just kind of looking at innovation these days. A lot of what used to be heavy manufacturing equipment now comes in its small scale version for some of these custom craftsman shops. And so we want to make sure that that's acknowledged. One example, Clint Orms, some of their processes are not entirely by hand. Obviously, they touch all of their pieces by hand, but some of it does require some, again, what used to be considered heavy manufacturing equipment is now small scale and can fit on the desk. So we just want to acknowledge that change in innovation and allow that in any district where artisan and craftsman workshop is already allowed. Amended the definition, or I guess changing the definition of farmer's market and flea market. I don't know how many of you have been to the last 2 or 3 iterations of farmer market that we have. They are not true farmers markets by the definition that we have. But the majority of that product is not coming off somebody's farm. They are arts and crafts and knickknacks and so on. Obviously, we've seen good support through the community in those, so there's not any issue with them being not truly a farmer's market. So we're recommending referring to those as an open air market or a pop-up market. And then the flea market definition will remain basically the same. More of your permanent primary use as a flea market, kind of a mixed use where different people have their booths, selling their goods and wares. We added definitions for basically any land use on the land use table that didn't already have a definition. I think some of these are pretty self-explanatory, but the attorneys will tell us it's always good to define things. We did add a definition for the data center and added a definition for battery energy storage system. Those are new uses on the land use table. We'll talk about that in a moment too. For the residential updates, so this is RE, R1, R1A, R2, RM, and RT. We did not change R3, which is your multifamily. Reduced the corner setback, the side setback on a corner lot from 15 to 5 feet. If you look around most of our developments around town, they were developed with a 5-foot setback on the corner lots. A lot of especially the more dense neighborhoods that are being developed, don't have the space to add that extra 10 feet to the corner lots. So it's fairly standard across the state that a 5-foot setback on a corner is not a problem. The fence itself in the backyard, from the front of the house to the back, can be built at 0 already. So we're not changing any visibility issues or creating any visibility issues. So I think this will help a lot of your infill projects. People reinvesting in properties and want to do additions, that's become an issue. And we've had a handful of cases go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. It's hard to prove a peculiarity when it's just a regular lot. So it's hard to meet that definition of a variance, but we think this will benefit many of those infill and renovation projects. So in the ordinance, that covers sections 2, 3, 4, 6, and 9, each of those various zoning districts. The requirements, the parking requirement for accessory dwelling units, reducing that from 2 spaces down to 1 space. Again, a lot of our existing properties that are eligible for an accessory dwelling unit, if they're already built, really don't have room to add 2 more parking spaces to their existing 2-car driveway. Unless it's a corner lot, we have yet to approve any on the middle of a block because they cannot meet the parking. But I think adding 1 parking space, a lot of driveways have that kind of flexibility without getting into issues with engineering on their driveway widths or their approach widths, or if they've got room to put one, to the side of the house, just again, allowing more flexibility. So this is also under section 4 of the ordinance. In R2, we've talked about it before, how it allows multiple housing types, single-family dwellings, single-family with an accessory dwelling unit, townhomes, and duplexes. The original code only allowed 1 building type on the block face. So from intersection to intersection, one side of the street, if the first house to build is a duplex, all of the rest of the lots are required to be duplexes. Again, if we look around the existing parts of town, duplexes and garden homes and townhomes are mixed in throughout. I don't think that we need to be in the business of regulating to that detail. If someone's reinvesting in property, whether they're combining lots or splitting lots, this would allow a little more flexibility for that to kind of naturally occur through a neighborhood. And that comes in sections.
So in essence, what you're saying here, if you have a block that has all single-family homes,
Mhm.
and someone buys one of those lots and tears that single-family home down to build a duplex, that would be allowed now?
That would be allowed.
And it's not allowed if we don't change this?
That's correct. They do have to meet, the duplex does require a wider lot, a minimum of a 60-foot wide lot. And you have to have 2 parking spaces for each unit still. But because the rest of the homes in that block are single family, they wouldn't be allowed to. Similar, we've got areas, especially if you look at around River Hill, we've got blocks that are townhomes for 3 or 4 townhomes. Somebody buys 2 townhome lots, builds a single family home, 2 or 3 more townhomes, another 2 or 3 single family homes. By today's standards, that wouldn't be allowed.
Well, I understand what you're talking about. My only problem is if you have a residential neighborhood and one street is all and they all bought these houses and they're all single-family homes. And then someone wants to go in there and build a duplex, if they have a 60-foot wide lot, build a duplex between two single-family homes.
Right.
Is that not,
If it's already zoned R2, the zoning would say they have the right, unless somebody digs deep enough to see this lot. So if someone's buying a home in an area that is zoned R2, if you're looking at just land use, that's an option. But this was the part that would restrict it from that. But yes, that would allow that at this point.
well, it would allow it except because of what we have, it doesn't allow it, is that correct?
Correct.
I mean, I would be pretty careful about making a statement unless you dig real deep. No one would know if someone wanted to build a duplex next to my house.
Right, this is just an R2.
Yeah,
Say
so.
it's
Fine,
the
it's
air.
R2 is R2, it's a residential neighborhood. And I'm a little uncomfortable with making a change like that without really having some input from, I mean, I think this is pretty buried in this planning and zoning. It's a public hearing, but I don't think anyone looked at this or had any ideas that, I mean, to me, that's a pretty substantial a change.
Okay.
I mean, I understand if you're building a new subdivision and you got lots and you can do, you know, townhome duplexes or whatever.
Right.
Because when you go in there, you know that's what you're getting. But when you go into a neighborhood that's it's very similar to what we faced with short-term rentals.
Right.
I'm a little uncomfortable with just, you know, sneaking in a change, and then 2 months from now, you got someone that lives on a block with 10 houses, and then someone buys a house, tears it down, starts building a duplex. They didn't buy their homes there to have a duplex next to them.
Again, this was only on the street face, correct?
Right.
The rest of the block could already be whatever.
That's correct.
Well, when you say street face,
So the block face.
Yeah, the block face. So look at the graphic there. So the block face is between the two side streets, so intersection to intersection on one side of the street.
well, I go back to my simple question is, I live on a street, and from block to block, there's 10 single-family homes facing the street. And right now, you can't go in there and buy one of those houses and tear it down and build a duplex. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So what you want to do is you want to change the ordinance where someone can go in there and start building duplexes where there's houses where people bought their homes.
What are you zoned?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I'm zoned. I'm talking about this. It's R2, okay? So there's a lot of.
I'm saying.
I'm just saying that we had a tremendous problem when we dealt with short-term rentals. People bought their homes, lived in a home, and then all of a sudden someone bought a home next door to them and started doing transient rentals. And we had to fix that because that was a major problem. And now, you know, I'm uncomfortable. I mean, it's me. I'm just expressing, I'm uncomfortable with sneaking in this, which is what we're doing. Because I don't think that if you would have put an announcement in the paper to really explain about the changes that you're trying to get into the ordinances, I think you would have a lot of people here speaking up against this. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just uncomfortable with
No, I
that.
understand. I don't agree we're sneaking it in. We're going through the process to change the code. That's why we're having this conversation.
Well, you
But
are, and I agree.
understand your point, but just to clarify, we're not sneaking anything in.
Well, maybe that's a poor choice of words, but there is no one here to speak at this public hearing, and I guarantee you that no one really knows what we're doing. And a lot of things don't require a lot of oversight, but in this particular case, I personally think this is a major change.
Okay?
I think this is a major change in the ordinances where you're gonna allow someone to go into, could be an old neighborhood, could be a bunch of old houses, and someone buys one or two houses where everybody else has their single-family home and starts building duplexes.
Correct.
To me, that's a big problem.
Okay?
For me,
Anything
I
else?
see it as already being pretty common in the older ones, because that's what I do. I renovate,
Yeah,
you
but
know, a
it-
lot of these older homes,
Well,
and
it's-
literally there'll be a duplex or even multiple, you know, 4 units in an old house right next to I have one right next door to mine, you know, single-family home.
So you went inside the house and you created, or you tore the house down and you built duplexes?
No, I didn't tear it down. I'm saying it's already existing on most of our, you were talking about the older communities. The older communities
I'm just talking
already
about
have
in
it.
general. It could be a brand new subdivision. Where you're, you know, I buy my house in a neighborhood, like I say, you know this, you went through this, we all went through this, and this is more drastic than that, where, you know, people came in for a conditional use permit to put a short-term rental in a neighborhood where people bought their homes, invested in their homes. And I personally think that you're gonna have a lot of people that are thinking that's going to hurt the value of my home, and I can't argue with them, because they bought that house, they live in that house, and now all of a sudden, next door to them, they got a duplex,
Right.
basically for rental. It can be lived in, but it also can be rented.
Correct.
And I think that we need to have a lot more transparency than what I see right here with this.
Okay. Any other comments on this one?
Well, I just have a question. So are you more concerned about the fact that it would be 2 dwellings on one lot? Or the
No, I'm
fact that
not,
it could be
what I'm
rented?
concerned about, Carrie, and you weren't here when we went through this with this short-term
No,
rental stuff.
heard about
And it was a
plenty.
disaster. What I'm concerned about is we had, you know, someone that was buying a house in a subdivision, R2 subdivision, and it was a block with 10 houses on it. People bought their homes, they've been living there for years, they invested in it, that's their investment. And then someone comes in and wants a conditional use permit to turn that house into a short-term rental where you have, you know, maybe you could have a different person or 2 people there every 30 days. And they were rightly concerned that that affects the value of their home, and it affects the traffic in the neighborhood, it affects a lot of things. And I'm just it's not about the fact you're gonna have 2 residences as opposed to 1. You're giving them the ability to build a duplex. A duplex is not a single-family home, and it, you know, you're in the real estate business, it definitely can affect the value of homes in the neighborhood if you allow a duplex to be built on a single-family, you know, street. And I think we need to be more transparent, and I think there needs to be more notice so people have the ability to come and speak at a public hearing about this possibility happening in their neighborhood. Instead of just passing this, and then all of a sudden someone goes out there and builds a duplex, and you have people that are really upset, and I don't blame them. I think there needs to be a lot more thought into how you're doing this as opposed to just making this recommendation and, you know, us just putting our seal of approval on this.
I understand. That's why we're here having this discussion.
And I agree.
The other part of that is a lot of the infill that we have looked at. Some of that is to try to capture more housing that's affordable inside the city limits. And so some of the infill, so this isn't just a zoning discussion, this is also part of the housing discussion.
And I
By
understand.
allowing a little more density on existing infrastructure to capitalize on that existing infrastructure would make it cheaper. But I hear your point.
I mean, I
So-
understand what I'm not saying that there's not some merit to this, but what I'm saying is there needs to be a whole lot more transparency and notice for people to really know what we're talking about
Mhm.
and give them the opportunity to come to this public hearing and express their opinion. I
Right.
just think this is, I'm just uncomfortable with doing this like this. I don't know, this probably still has to go to city council for
It does.
approval. But, you know, I think people have the right to know if you're changing the ordinances that allows me to go buy a house in between their houses, tear it down and build a duplex.
Mhm.
I think that's a big, big mistake. It's
Well,
just not
keep in mind
transparent.
you might have one behind you, like that's already
I get
allowed
that.
by current writing.
You might,
know,
you
current
might, but you're
code.
not, right now, you're not allowed to do it.
Just street front.
That's what
yeah.
I'm saying. Right now, you're not allowed to do it. And we're making a decision on, you know, changing that with,
Mhm.
which could affect, you know, could substantially affect people that live in those houses.
Right.
I'm telling you, if I lived there and one day the house was being torn down and I went over and said, what's going on? Well, we're gonna build a duplex here. I think I'd be pretty upset.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
For going to the mixed use district, one of the things, we talked about it before, again, we kind of covered this in the workshop in December, removing the requirement for a concept plan and the traffic impact analysis. Concept plan really fits more the planned development district where you're changing the development requirements for that specific zone case. Whereas mixed use has a scripted set of development regulations, setbacks, height requirements, parking ratios. We've had several mixed use case proposals, at least come to our office. They weren't prepared to provide a site plan because they didn't have all of that intact. So they weren't able to file that zone case. Because there already are strict regulations on how mixed use can be developed, in my opinion, the concept plan is above and beyond what we should require for that zone change. No different than any other commercial zone change. We don't ask for a site plan, we're not requiring it. We don't tie them to that initially. So recommending removal of that. Also with the traffic impact analysis, we don't require that for other commercial zoning. Again, if they don't have their full concept vetted out, they can't do a traffic impact analysis anyway, because you don't have the data to calculate all that. So recommending the removal of those two. And the open space requirement, mixed use currently requires that, is it 7 or 8%? 7% of the lot be dedicated to publicly accessible open space on private property maintained by the private property owner. So that'd be building your commercial development, putting in 7% of your lot as a public park that you own and maintain that's open to the public. As you can imagine, most of our developers do not want to do that, and currently the code requires it. So we're recommending we remove that. Those mixed-use developments would then pay into the parkland dedication fee, which helps develop and continue building out our parks. Looking at the supplementary development requirements for certain uses, the battery energy storage system and data centers, recommending both of them be prohibited within 100 feet of the 100-year floodplain. Anything within 500 feet of the 100-year floodplain or 1,000 feet of Nimitz Lake, which is our primary water source, right, requires a conditional use permit to come before P&Z and City Council. This is similar to other environmentally sensitive uses, all of your automotive uses, fuel sales, auto parts stores, repair shops, picking up on some of those. Carrie's laughing because we had that conversation this week. The pop-up or temporary market shall not occur on a vacant or unimproved lot. So any of those farmers markets or pop-up markets can't just go to a vacant lot and set up because they don't have parking, they don't have any infrastructure whatsoever to support that. So recommending we keep them on existing properties that have been developed. That's in ordinance section 14. Parking ratio for multi-tenant buildings. Again, the current code requires the combination of uses to go to each individual use and their prescribed parking ratio. Since multi-tenant centers expect some overlap of customers, overlap of hours, we're recommending that we amend that for multi-tenant shopping centers, whether it's a single building or a complex of buildings, have a single parking ratio based on square footage. So just as an example, your current office, your general offices is 1 to 300, medical offices are 1 to 200, retail is 1 to 300, and restaurants are 1 to 100, all based on square footage. So for multi-tenant, we're recommending 1 to 250 parking spaces. And then building or complexes over 20,000 square feet are reduced to 1 to 300 parking. Actually have a development right now, an existing shopping center. They're wanting to add a pad site. Looking through their existing parking, existing square footage, at the current parking requirement, they have to get a variance for their parking. If this is approved, they would actually be allowed to put that pad site in. And I, just from driving by that shopping center on a regular basis, where they're putting the pad site is not used for parking. So just kind of give a general scale. We've all seen Tractor Supply and the Chinese buffet and Specs parking lot, except for big Ty-Vee games, that parking lot's empty, or mostly empty. Viable shopping center, they're all the businesses are busy, but they're just not using that much parking. So any
It's
future
not that big a
development.
change, it's pretty
Yeah.
reasonable.
I've seen some other cities that are lower than that. I've seen some cities that are still higher than that. Just a handful of properties that we looked at and just kind of did some rough calculations. I think this would be a good mix, a good blend of that. I don't foresee it causing a parking problem. I think some of your businesses will tell you a parking problem is a good problem. Shows that they're busy and active businesses, so. Tried to balance that as much as we could to keep those things moving forward. And additionally, on staff, every time there's a change in a tenant, we don't have to go back and recalculate the entire shopping center every time. So speed some of those quick permits along, because if we just check the box that they're allowed to be there and don't have to worry about parking anymore.
So is that because it could be a different use, you would have to go
Right.
back?
So River Oaks Shopping Center is another great example, as they've had some tenants change over the years. We've got to go to the property owner, get an entire inventory of all of their uses, all of their parking count, and kind of keep track of that each time we get a tenant turnover. Fortunately, most of our shopping centers don't have a high turnover, but when we do have a change, it's quite a bit of staff work just to check off that the existing shopping center already has parking. Some of the changes to the land use table, and you've got a better printout in your packet on the last page. We're adding pet and pet supply stores and pet grooming to the industrial and manufacturing district because the kennel, indoor or outdoor, is allowed in industrial manufacturing. Obviously, most of your kennels are gonna have those other things as part of their business. So wanted to make sure it at least carries through that they're allowed. The battery energy storage system, we're recommending industrial and manufacturing as a conditional use. The data centers, recommending industrial manufacturing as a conditional use. And then adding just a general retail, because we don't have a general retail on the land use table currently, in C2 and C3. And then again, we revise those land use, or not the definition, the land uses on the table for the open air pop-up market.
So any battery energy storage system would have to get a conditional use permit no matter what they
That's
did,
correct.
correct?
It'd have to be zoned industrial and go to a conditional use permit. And then again, as we talked about for the supplemental requirements, if they're within 100 feet of the floodplain, they're prohibited. If they're within 500 feet or 1,000 feet of limits, then they're required a conditional use permit anyway. So,
Is that not required if a battery, under the present zoning code, a battery energy storage system? Is there any stipulations on where they can go and?
since they are not listed in the code at all,
Okay.
they are a conditional use permit in any district. So they actually would be able to, even if it's zoned R1, they could come to P and Z and city council for a conditional use permit, regardless of the zoning, because it's any district if it's not listed. So we
Yeah.
wanted to make sure we listed it, put it in the proper location, and obviously a conditional use permit, so we could look at a lot of other things that come along with those.
It's a very good idea.
That's it. Like I said, I'm happy to go through section by section, or we can discuss any of the topics as needed.
What exactly is a data center?
The data center would be your, large complex, lots of computer servers, processing data.
Okay.
The definition,
Holding extensive computer
yeah,
programming and stuff like that. It requires a lot of power and, I'm told, a lot of water.
Okay.
We don't really have any data centers here, do we, Drew?
no, not that I'm aware of.
That's a big thing. I mean, right now, they're a huge water user. I didn't even realize that, but that's a big thing.
Okay.
I don't have a definition in the draft ordinance, but we will add one.
Okay.
If y'all recommend it anyway, we will add one.
I think it's a good idea.
Sure.
Good point.
I know we talked about, we've got a draft one, I just didn't get it in here, so. Same with the battery, energy, and storage system. That one's a little more self-explanatory, but while we're adding definitions, we'll add those both in there.
Have y'all been approached at all about battery energy storage systems in the
I've
city?
had one phone call, and that was probably 18 months ago. I'm gonna assume it's not happening. The only thing in the current code that you could argue is a comparable land use would be a utility, which is allowed in any district. That's more of your electric substations, your Atmos gas substations that they have. But if it's part of the energy system, the grid, it would be considered a utility unless we define it separately. So,
Which is a good idea. Define
I
it
think so.
separately. Yeah.
any other questions? Now, coming back real quick, the block face discussion. If the commission agrees, we can pull that out and do that separate. We can give additional comments to city council, however the commission wants to handle it. You don't have to approve everything. You can pick and choose, pull things out, however you see fit. If you think that needs more discussion, then we can, by all means, bring that back and
For
advertise
me,
it more specifically if needed,
I
and just
think
have that as a
there's
separate.
a level of expectation. You know, when you're, like, if I'm moving into an area or I'm going to do a project, I always look up what's it zoned.
Mhm.
What can I anticipate coming down the road? Potentially, may or may not happen. So for me personally, I don't really see it as an issue because of that level of expectation in R2.
The problem with that is what he just said. He said that the zoning may be there, but it's presently not allowed.
It is allowed on other sides,
Well,
just not on
What we're
the
talking about
street
is on the
side.
street
Yeah.
facing side.
And
If you dig deep enough,
Right, and I think to Kim's point, most people will look at the zoning, look at
they
the
won't,
land.
they won't go to this
No, they
because
won't.
they
They'll
would
look at
look
the
at the
land use
zoning and
table.
They will assume that could happen. They won't know about the fact that the street facing portion is in play right
And I
now.
think it's our responsibility to
So-
be more transparent, and I think that my opinion would be that pull this and have some more discussion about it and have a true public hearing and publicize this, that this is a potential change in the ordinances, that if you live on a street facing block, you would recommend changing it where you can build duplexes on a street facing block.
Right.
So people understand and they can come in and give their input. That would be my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, everything else you have here, I'm good with, but I think before this goes to city council, I think this requires some additional discussion, or maybe just pull it out and let's be transparent about what this is about and have a real public hearing on it. So people, and maybe no one comes, I don't know, maybe people don't care.
Right.
But I'm just, I always look at a worst case scenario when I look, just like we did when we did these conditional use permits, and we had, people were not happy about that in these neighborhoods, and I don't think people would be happy. Well, and again, you're right, in the middle of the neighborhood, they don't have a choice. And maybe nobody cares, but at least we give them the option to come and speak to it.
Right.
That's up to you guys. Like I said, we can easily pull it out and handle that separately and push everything else to city council. That's up to you guys.
Well, I can see it both ways. I can see both of their points. Also, if we do pull this and discuss it, I think that we need to bring up the point that on KCAD, on the appraisal district, a lot of times their zoning is incorrect.
Right.
So you have to go to the city zoning map, and honestly, there's even a lot of realtors that don't know that. And they'll list
Yes.
everything according to KCAD, but then they don't go into the zoning map to actually see the difference. So even if as a realtor and somebody's selling that piece of property, that person that's buying it doesn't really know what they're getting into because they don't know if it is R1 or R2. Also, I think it would probably help if we see the map and kind of see where the current R2s are.
That's probably a good idea, and you know what, that's
and
why
put
you
our
hire,
eyes on that.
that's why you get a good realtor.
That's
That's
exactly right.
exactly right. I mean, I did commercial real estate for 25 years, and I can tell you, there's a lot of commercial realtors that didn't know anything about zoning changes and things that are allowed and everything, and that's why when you know, I agree with you, and I think you're right. I think it would be good to have that, to see exactly where that could happen.
And then if we do the public hearing and somebody comes in, maybe run through a couple of scenarios and go, okay, yes,
Right.
duplexes are already allowed in your community, this block that's blocked off as R2, but it can't happen here or here because of what your block face is
What
already.
is it, what is the rationale behind that? If you've got an R2 designated neighborhood and all the interior streets, you're allowed to go in and build duplexes, but on the block facing street, what was the reason? I mean, what is the rationale for that?
No, it's not necessarily interior or exterior of the neighborhood. It's just looking at each block one at a time. I think the biggest intent behind this regulation really goes back to the building code. So, single-family home, you typically have 5-foot setback on either side. So you end up with 10 foot of separation between each lot. A garden home or a patio home has a 10-foot setback on one side, 0 on the other. The next lot has to have 10 foot of separation.
Right.
Or they can fire rate the walls and do some different construction methods. So with the building code in mind, if they're all single family, that 10 foot of separation is built in. If they're all patio homes, the 10 foot of separation is built in. Patios on one side, 0 lot line, 10-foot patio, 0 lot line, all the way down the block. Townhomes can build 0 to 0. So everything has a firewall because they're all technically connected. We've dealt with it in River Hills on a couple different lots that are platted as townhomes. One neighbor built a single-family home years ago before this was in the code. And then the next person buys a townhome lot. Well, because the neighbor is 5 feet away from the property line, they can't build to 0 without increasing their fire rating. They have to keep a 10-foot separation. So they end up with an even narrower townhome
Right.
where they have some setback based on the neighbor already, and then a 0 lot line on the other side. So I think that's where this really stemmed from, was to help ease that on the building code. My argument is this is zoning and that's building code. The building code already addresses the construction method. This is just a land use.
Yeah,
R2 says you can do it, let them do it and figure out the construction method with the building department. So that was kind of our look at that. I think that's where it stemmed from. And just by removing this, gets back to truly the land use and can I build it to meet the code would be allowed.
Yeah, that's really the most, that's the start. That's the most
Right.
important thing. There's a lot, there's a lot more control over building and codes than there is
Correct.
land use codes.
Yeah, and so I think that was one reason we looked at this. Again, one for the housing side, just to allow some different infill product. If someone were to buy 3 or 4 lots and choose to build patio homes,
Yeah.
which are typically on a smaller lot, allows for some different infill with a little higher density. Really just to address the housing side, since it is allowed by right in the code, except this piece. So that was why we considered it and wanted to throw it to you guys to see what you
Well,
think.
and again, I would be more comfortable if we really, I think Carrie's got a great idea. I'd like to look at where the R2 block facing, what we're talking about, where it potentially could happen, and then have a separate hearing on this, and make sure that we let people in, we know if we get the R2 block facing, we can target those areas where that could happen, because technically speaking, I mean, if you're gonna put a sign out that says a public hearing on this, you should be putting a public hearing on every one of those properties that potentially could be affected by the change in the zoning code.
Right.
I'm gonna
So-
need some volunteers from the planning and zoning board to
I'm busy that weekend.
I'm sick already. Get our
But
steps
the
in.
public notice procedure allows for us to do this in mass, because we are changing zoning citywide, right? If you're talking about
No,
you're
what I do think would be a good idea though,
That's a
Michael, is
challenge for us
I
to do.
think there should be some very, targeted notification, for where this could happen. I don't know whether you do it with a notice on the door or you put sign.
Not a chance. I'm not putting my staff through that.
And
I get it.
the bigger issue with that is if we change our notification method for one
No, I don't
part
wanna
of the
do that.
case, then it brings to question why we're not doing it for
No,
everything.
no, I get you. I wouldn't wanna
Yeah.
do that
And
either.
it makes sense. I mean, when we've done like massive push notifications for events, like we're gonna have this thing, we're gonna have this thing, well, 30 people show up maybe if you're lucky on like a huge event. And
Yeah.
these are hard to get folks to show up for, right?
It is, but I don't disagree with you, but
I hear what you're saying, Mike.
What we can do is if the commission wants to separate this and look at this at another time, the notification online, the notification in the paper can be more specific.
We could talk about it on the radio a little bit
Right.
more, and we could do
that's fine with me.
And
And then maybe nobody shows up
They
and then
might.
we do it, and if anyone complains, hey,
We at least gave you a
we
clear
had
opportunity.
a public hearing specifically for this thing here.
No, absolutely. And I'm assuming you can't see this real well, because I can't see it real well. I'm trying to think of an area where you can see the color. If you look at Comanche Trace, the very far bottom end of the screen, that kind of mustard yellow color, that's R2. I'm gonna say generally R2 is scattered out all over town. The majority of our residential neighborhoods are R1 and R1A, so we're not impacting the majority of our residential areas. Obviously, if we separate this, we can do some better maps that you can actually see on your little screen. But
I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
and I
it
think
is
that
all
the
over
older
the town, and I
neighborhoods,
think that's the point.
Like Kim said, this is not gonna happen in Comanche Trace.
Right, and
I
then-
mean, theoretically it could, but that's not gonna happen, but there are some older neighborhoods with block facing houses, and that would be, where this potentially would,
Right, and a lot of the neighborhoods, especially the newer neighborhoods, have deed restrictions that prevent that anyway.
correct.
We don't get into deed restrictions.
That's what Comanche Trace has, yeah.
But again, it is scattered all over town, but I can say at least the majority of neighborhoods we're not talking about. So,
Right.
but we can certainly, if y'all want to bring it back, we can show you a much more legible map that shows.
That would be cool,
where
but,
R2
and then
is.
again, if you can, do like Michael says, maybe do some radio announcements.
Mhm.
You may even get the lead to do something and get some notices in the paper 30 days ahead of time or however, whatever you guys think it needs to be. Maybe nobody shows up, but I can tell you, I would be much more comfortable giving people the opportunity to know what could be coming to their neighborhood, their block.
Right.
That being said, I will entertain a motion on, all of the changes that are being proposed here and how to handle the one thing we might want to pull out.
There we go. Martin, can you go back to the other PowerPoint? Get you guys the heading so you can read it a little more for the motion. There we go.
Not your item, or the motion.
Say again?
I mean, I think I think a motion could be made to approve all of the changes to the zoning code that's been recommended by staff, except whatever that is, and recommend pulling that out for further discussion and possible, public hearing. I don't know exactly what you want from us.
So if you reference the changes to the R2 block face requirements, that's clear enough for me.
Okay,
All right.
so does someone want to make a motion?
Well, I'll make the motion, and it's, as it said, as we stated, everything was approved with the exception of the block face
In R2.
and R2. And that's for further examination and review.
Okay, so we have a motion.
we also have clarified that we're adding definitions for data centers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
true.
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand. All right, so
Excellent.
we'll,
We'll carry that on to city council. Accept the block face. We'll add those two definitions. They are in the land use table. I think that's it. Next meeting is April 2nd. I think we have a case yet? Yes. One case, plat deadline is next week, so we'll see if we have any plats. We'll go from there.
anybody have anything else that they want to add or say or anything?
All good.
I appreciate the consideration to
Yeah.
pull this out and take a look at it. I just think it's the right thing to do.
And
All right.
the block face discussion will not be on the April agenda, because that advertising deadline is tomorrow. and I
Okay.
gotta
Yeah.
type that up before tomorrow, so.
Okay.
All
we'll see
right,
that.
we're,
We'll kick that back into May.
All right.
we're adjourned.
Thank you.
That's a good point.